I've been on the train rushing to get back to Paddington for a GB News show. I've just seen reports of a reform councillor being arrested for putting a flag up on a council building. Is that right? Yeah, that's right, yeah. What the F happened in the hour or so I left Epping? I'll tell you what happened, mate. A load of bent coppers enforcing the bent rules of the bent state. The same bent coppers that ruthlessly crush you whilst turning a blind eye to endemic grooming gangs for 30 years. They rocked up and started nicking people for no reason. Paz went down. I watched some of his live stream and it sounded like it didn't go well at all because the average Rosa in the UK is as bent as Elton John's cock. And that's been in a couple of tight squeezes. Anyway, how do you think the politicians reacted? In fact, before I show you the tweet from a well-known Labour MP, a sitting member of the Houses of Parliament, I just want to point out that I was right again because I've been saying this for years. The response to horrific atrocities like Southport and the bombing of the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, the response to those events the next day was to say, you know what the real problem is? People might be mean to regulars at the snack bar. Oh, we can't upset them. And I said, it's so bad if the response was that after the murder, the cold, calculated, ruthless, appalling atrocity murder of children, if the response of the powers that be to that event was to say the next day, you know what the real problem is? Islamophobia. Well then, they're enthralled to that ideology. And I've always said they could detonate a nuclear bomb if they got a dirty bomb, a suitcase nuke, and blew it up in the middle of London and killed 1 million people in rush hour. The next day, the government would say, oh yeah, but the real problem is now people might be mean to the poor oppressed worshippers of the pot-bellied epileptic desert midget. No, that's not the problem. But in response to a councillor getting arrested for flying a flag, here's what the average British MP said. Racist graffiti on takeaways. Lee Rigby. Slurs on bus stops. Southport massacre. A nurse racially abused in the park. London bombings. Every day the far-right launch pogroms. I'm sorry. Go and read a book and learn what a pogrom is. You silly mare. I think she's called that because her brain is the same size as a sultana. Okay, Adam Brooks from GB News shared this image. As you are all aware by now, I am sure, she has of course been nicked for flying the flag. And as usual, the lawfare crowd, the left, the insane, deranged, purple-haired, morbidly obese, howling birds and their sparrow-boned, soy-based men have been lying on X, trying to use the old lawfare card and say, actually, it should be illegal to put a flag up. Sarah White, concerned mum, who's actually branch chair of a Reform UK branch, so what? Arrested for waving a flag. Actually arrested on suspicion of breaching a Section 14 order because the Civic Centre was outside of the protest area. Yeah, actually. What do you mean? Oh, actually, it was for breaching a Section 14 order, so technically, stick her in the gulag for 6 years. What planet are these people on? They think that's a clever rebuttal. Section 14. Poke your Section 14 order up your saggy baggy ring piece, Mr. whoever you are. I mean, they're always faceless, aren't they? Although I will say there was one grain of truth in there. Reform, hate the truth and hate the police. That last bit there, yeah, guilty. You've got me there, love. Why would I not hate the people that helped the 250,000 diddlers roger the children? It seems like a reasonable thing to hate. I'll tell you what else I hate. Malaria. Yeah, not a big fan of that either. No. Bollock cancer. Yeah, not a fan of that either. Funny old thing. I don't like things that are openly hostile to me. Weird that, innit? And I'm sure you're all aware of this as well. The protest leader, the lad who basically started the whole thing, again, in response to an Ethiopian illegal sexually assaulting a child. That's why it kicked off in Epping. He was arrested on fake charges, inciting, and they can say inciting anything. It's bollocks. Hear the depth of his soul cry out as he is taken away, liberate England. We must do this It is our duty.
Callum's now being arrested. Callum, the Epping line.
Charges? What charges?
Were you under inciting racial hatred?
Excuse me?
Inciting racial hatred. You don't have to say anything about my home defence if you don't know mental health. Something racial hatred will
What helped you know?
Just need a bit of room. Just need a bit of room.
Liberate England!
Damning footage in my book, that. The Gestapo are rounding up the boys who were upset when Ethiopian men break into the country illegally, rock up at hotels illegally, and bang little girls more than Stevie Wonder's big toe illegally. So of course people are angry about it. Yeah, they have every right to be. Oh yeah, and don't forget, they've just arrested this guy on trumped up incitement charges. But when these two fellas, Mighty Mo Iftar Hanif and Jawad Hussain, just casually made a death convoy and grabbed pally flags and megaphones and drove through the centre of London shouting, surprise sex their mothers, surprise sex their daughters, them all like animals. When they did that, they definitely weren't inciting anyone. Of course they weren't. No. And this is the BBC UK homepage. Starmer, family rules for asylum, Liverpool, Caesarean jewellery, and man arrested for kicking off sort of police protest. So they've hid it down there in the corner, and all they've got to say about it is a man kicked a policeman, which is, I'm sure most people would say it's not a big deal. If you actually physically assault a copper, then you probably should get arrested. But zero mention of a reform councillor getting nicked for hanging a flag, actually, and young Callum there getting nicked for organising a protest. Organising a protest because people don't like it when a little girl gets a big hairy fist stuffed down the front of her knickers by a dirty, horrible, thieving, lying, illegal, criminal alien. Yeah, we're the bad guys. Makes loads of sense, doesn't it? Let me finish with Zara. So there she is, capably proving my point that I've said for many, many, many years. These people, the rats in suits and blouses that infest the Houses of Commons and Lords, are the enemy. They are the enemy. They can't muster a single bit of outrage or empathy for you when they butcher children. But graffiti, whoa, the gloves are off when graffiti starts getting put up. Isn't it obvious, naysayers? Isn't it obvious that we're dealing with a fifth column, a treacherous dog that will always side with their in-group preference, which is the other regulars at the snack bar, and will always hate you, the ancestors of the people that have inhabited those islands for 10,000 years. Both of my granddads fought in World War II, both of them. I'm one of those boring Englishmen who's from so many generations of Englishmen, you don't even really know your family history. Nobody cares. You just go around here somewhere. Welsh and Scottish and Irish, it's all in there. These people, Sultana has no loyalty at all to my nation of birth. None. That's not a prejudiced statement. It's not made because she looks a certain way. It's made because she acts a certain way. She tweets like that about graffiti and says nothing about the murder of children. Little blonde girls like Emily Jones get their throats cut in parks, and this thing has nothing to say about it. Anyway, I'm getting angry, so we'll finish on a lighter note. Shall we play another game of Guess the Ethnicity and Nationality? It's fun for all the family and helps kids to understand that diversity is not a strength. Shop horror. Woman in her 20s sexually assaulted at bus stop outside major supermarket. I'll have big, lanky, googly-eyed Marley with a lob on for 20, please, Nick. My wife called me a paedophile. That's a big word for a 9-year-old. And we'll finish on this one. We'll finish on this one from one of the most famous low IQ lemons in the Labour Party. A human chicken McNugget responding to nothing more than a bunch of blokes marching through a shopping centre while singing a bit. Paul Mason. This is what Farage and Badenoch have called into existence. Crack down hard and fast on these fascist morons. Paul. To call that a poor tweet does a disservice to the eternally impoverished Paul. You are an imbecile. You are a left-wing ideologue. and you haven't got the brains you were born with. Badenoch, this Johnny come lately Badenoch, and I even old Frogface, they don't just somehow spring people like me into existence, you know, very, very left-wing for 15 years, all of a sudden extremely right-wing, at least on crime and immigration. That doesn't just spring out of the ether like a leprechaun teleporting in from behind a bush. No, Badenoch, she's just some gap-toothed Johnny come lately, and she's a foreigner. Do you know where it comes from? I'll give you a clue. Seeing pictures of dead little girls or little blonde girls bleeding out on the street because they've been knifed 20 times by a bloke from Rwanda. That's what does it. I've made this point dozens of times. Tony Romo. Mr. Robinson isn't some sort of Churchillian genius, orator, charismatic. He's just a bloke. Because you don't need to hoodwink anyone. You don't need to convert anyone or call them into existence. If you, the state, and people like you, cover up the endemic torture and abuse of children, and a few, you know, pop concerts explode and soldiers get decapitated just for the cherries on top of the sundae. If that happens, you spawn the fascists, Paul. You do it. It's nothing anyone's said. It's not Tony Romo giving clever speeches that make people go, oh, well, I used to be a liberal, but now let's deport 8 million people. No. It's the death, the endless slaughter of children, the endemic kiddie fiddling, and the machinations of the state, the treacherous dogs in the Houses of Parliament. That is what caused me to go from I quite like Bernie Sanders to load 1 million of them onto some frigates and ditch them on a desert island while I point and laugh. That's a response, a perfectly logical human response to the death and abuse of children. And if you don't get that, you'll never get anything. Least of all, a Christmas card off the angry Bootneck. All right, that's all I've got to say for the day. If you think you're not living in a fascist dystopia, please let me know in the comments. If you think your local Bobby is a splendid old fellow like PC Murdoch, yeah, you've still got to beat Bobby, who the kids actually talk to. Let me know in the comments, because you're a unicorn inhabiting some strange part of England where the past still remains and common sense reigns free. But as far as I can see from here, doesn't look like there's anywhere left like that in the UK. All right, thanks for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you all tomorrow. Toodle pip. Cheers.